next time, buddy! Woo!
Hey everyone, Pugs here with 2 new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Wet Painters and Krusty Krab training video. And this is a momentous day, because I've been waiting for this one. When I reviewed my second favorite episode of the show, Can You Spare a Dime, last week, I told y'all that my favorite wasn't far behind. Well, I meant that shit, because wouldn't you know it, I'm reviewing my favorite ever episode today. And before I say any more on that, I've got to, like usual, say a quick thank you to everyone who's been watching and liking and commenting and all of that fun stuff. Now, without further ado, because I already know this video is going to be quite long, let's just get right into it. Starting off today's iconic double feature is Wet Painters, which is simply a classic episode, and that's all there really is to it. Well, with me that's not actually true, but it is the gist of things that this episode is a SpongeBob SquarePants classic. Wet Painters begins with an accurate depiction of what it's like to work in food service or retail when business is slow. And yes, that does include destroying stuff out of boredom. How much I'm joking when I say that will remain up to interpretation. I'm a proponent of audiences' free will in that way. Anyway, this first part of the episode is a good setup for the rest, even if it isn't particularly funny. And the episode plot starts to move. And I love how adorably excited that SpongeBob and Patrick are for their super secret assignment. I'll never get tired of this show's constant juxtaposition of childish behavior with being an adult. The faces in this part are really great as well, so expressive. And I love how all of this anticipation builds and builds only for it to be revealed that the assignment for the 2 best friends is painting Mr. Krabs' house. While this is perhaps a boring, laborious chore to many, for SpongeBob and Patrick it's something to find joy and excitement in, and this joy and excitement is infectious. And this is of course paired with the dramatics of Mr. Krabs threatening to cut their butts off if they get paint on anything. All in all, a really good setup for the rest of the episode, which is similar to No Weenies Allowed in that it's a collection of jokes rather than a plot moving. And that's in no way an insult. Some episodes, like Wet Painters, work better focusing on gags, whereas other episodes have more complex and interesting plots. It's about balance. And because Wet Painters is such a gag-filled episode, the bulk of the episode takes place during SpongeBob and Patrick's attempts to paint Mr. Krabs' house without getting paint on anything. Probably my favorite joke during this whole thing is the 4th wall break with the time cards, because I love when this show does 4th wall breaks and deconstructs some aspect of its own comedy. I love the dynamic between SpongeBob and Patrick here, with Patrick being more of an action guy than SpongeBob, one who's not at all careful. And the looming threat of Mr. Krabs gives SpongeBob and Patrick's plight in this episode some stakes, which also gives us some great dramatic moments, which I always love to see. Of course, one cannot talk about Wet Painters without discussing what might possibly be the most iconic line of the episode, "Flappin' Flotsam, what's that?" The voice acting, the visuals, the music, all of it is just perfection, just simply magnificent. It truly feels like the moment this entire episode was building up to because of the anticipation and fear of Mr. Krabs' threat and the stress felt by SpongeBob and Patrick. Admittedly, the next barrage of jokes are weaker than the ones before this key moment. The whole "we have technology" bit was pretty funny, but the rest of that specific montage didn't really get much in the way of laughs out of me. And then, of course, we have the part of the episode that reaches rock bottom levels of frustration, with Patrick putting the dollar in the vending machine. In my opinion, that bit could have been left out of the episode for sure, because even if it was shorter, I would have been way too frustrated, and I hate feeling frustrated at characters and situations. But it does lead into another part of the episode that I like, with the whole stack of paintings on the wall and another 4th wall break. I also really like SpongeBob's lame-ass pun in this part. It's endearing and hilarious to me. And then, of course, we've got the ending bit of the episode, with Mr. Krabs finding out about his dollar. Once again, we get a lot of anticipation and build-up, with the addition of dread this time around, only for the rug to be swept out from under us, with Mr. Krabs revealing the paint comes off with saliva. I like when expectations are subverted, at least sometimes. This episode is an example of one of those times. I also like that this episode showcases the troll side of Mr. Krabs, as he did all of that just to mess with SpongeBob and Patrick, who are rightfully pissed off with him. But, of course, we do get some universal justice at the end, with Mr. Krabs' laughing taking all the paint off of his walls. And that's a shame, because I really like how Mr. Krabs' house looked with the white paint. Actually, in general, the backgrounds in this episode were super cool. I love how detailed they were. Wet Painters is a really funny episode, and it makes sense why. It focuses almost entirely on gags. I'd say that the episode starts a bit better than it ends, or really has a kind of middling third quarter, if I were to divide the episode that way. And, unfortunately, the sheer frustration I feel with the vending machine is enough to bump this episode down to great rather than amazing. Seriously, if that was replaced with another joke, this episode probably would have been in my top tier, but I cannot stand feeling frustrated. And I know this review is really short because, again, this is one of those episodes that was very gag heavy, and I didn't want to list every single gag. So that's why Wet Painters is being put in my great tier, where it comes in with a score of 8.9 out of 10. Oh shit, it's happening. Okay, everyone stay calm. Everyone stay fucking calm. Y'all can tell I'm calm, right? I'm only reviewing my favorite ever episode and my favorite ever show, no big deal. Okay, I'm good now. Y'all know I can't resist a good bit, but let me get into talking about this episode because we're going to be here all day if I don't get started right now. This review is one I've been excited to get to ever since I began doing these videos. I wrote the written review for this episode after I started making YouTube videos, and so I was specifically excited to get to this moment. This right here, Krusty Krab training video, this is the peak. No matter how many times I rewatch this thing, and I've done so to the point where I can nearly recite the episode word for word, it never gets old. Its shine never dulls. Its jokes never tire. And man, I'm so excited to get started. Before I even get started talking about the actual content of this episode, I want to talk about how much I like the structure of this episode. The training video structure is just brilliant, a great parody of actual onboarding videos, which I have seen so many of. This also means that the episode is kind of told in chapters, though these chapters weave together quite seamlessly, so it's not a loose collection of scenes like the chapter structure might imply. The entire atmosphere of this episode is different from basically every other episode in the show. Only Boat Smarts and Yellow Pavement get close in that energy, and the latter has been accused of being rehash of both this episode and Boat Smarts by other people as well as myself, which is significant because I very rarely use that word to describe an episode. Anyway, like I was saying, the atmosphere of this episode is different from basically every other episode, from the title card, which is just black and white, to the music, where not even a single steel guitar appears. Seriously, it's really weird when you think about it. Getting into the actual content of this episode, let's talk about why I adore this episode so much. Just from the beginning few seconds, you can already tell that this episode is going to be something different. As I already said, the title card is basic as hell, and the booming sounds of the start of the training video, paired with some excellent background paintings, sets the tone nicely. I adore all the cheesy little jokes that we get from the narrator in this training video, who, as I should mention, is clearly not the French narrator, yet another difference from other episodes. These little jokes really make the training video here feel like those same onboarding videos I've watched before. They really make the parody. Admittedly, I do find the giraffe joke pretty funny, but I find most bad puns funny, so. There are times when the humor is more subtle as well, like because the restaurant closes at 6, which is just as cheesy as just as funny as the cheesy jokes, especially because of their casual delivery. This episode is full of wordier humor, which I just love, because honestly, that's some of my favorite kind of humor. Additionally, the jokes in this episode are plentiful, and they come fast because of this use of wordier humor, and that makes everything even better. Every character in this episode just shines. We learn a lot more about Mr. Krabs in this little video, with the brief retelling of the founding of the Krusty Krab. This section makes the episode feel almost like a parody of a documentary for a second, though founding stories are typically in training videos as well. We see that Mr. Krabs has always been a cheapskate, or a financial wizard, if we want to be kind. I love that the crew went to the trouble of making a whole detailed painting of the depressed Mr. Krabs, and it's just like a training video to skip right past the bad times to get to the good, right? Skipping ahead a bit, another great Mr. Krabs moment in this episode is when SpongeBob comes in to ask for a raise, and the man don't even look up. He don't even hesitate. He just says no. Perfect moment. SpongeBob is additionally just great in this episode. His enthusiasm for making a Krabby Patty and working at the Krusty Krab is palpable and adorable. He exemplifies being a model employee, aka being exploitable, which makes sense given everything we know about the little guy. I really like the moment where he scrubs his hands so hard that they're shaved off. That was a really funny moment. Actually, real quick, but I've thought that there could be an alternative interpretation of this joke, that SpongeBob just made his hands invisible because he scrubbed all the dirt, i.e. his skin and such, off of them. Not exactly the same thing as what I think, which is he completely scrubbed his hands off, but it's the same practically. Okay, none of this matters, let me move on. There's so many of these funny moments with SpongeBob in this episode, I could really talk about them all and make this video so long. I'll talk more about one of the best moments at the end of the review. The next character I'll mention is Squidward. He's so relatable in this episode, other than the fact that he's a slob, because never in my life would my workstation be that dirty. I love his quip about overtime to Mr. Krabs, who promptly responds hilariously. I love Squidward's "I really don't want to be here right now" badge, and I must ask, can I please get one of those for when I'm at work? Though actually my job right now isn't that bad, so we can hold off on that for now. And then, of course, we have his entire interaction with Patrick, which was me when dealing with certain customers at any of the retail and food service jobs that I've had. I especially love when Squidward just loses it and starts banging his head into the register. That was too funny. I also like that he's able to make friends with the paneling, as he'd say, when the narrator reminds him about poop, which, like I said in my review of Crabborg, this is an excellent use of toilet humor, and it's also a great parody of the dumb acronyms you learn in these kinds of videos. I'll end this character section by running through a couple of the side characters in this episode. We've got Patrick, who does a great job at breaking the fourth wall, or something like that anyway, when he enters the episode talking about the voice in the ceiling. He's also delightfully slow with how he's unable to place an order, which bounces off well with Squidward. Then there's Plankton, who isn't really the highlight of his appearance. That honor goes to the sheer chaos SpongeBob causes around him, combined with Mr. Krabs' unflappability, but he's still enjoyable. And lastly, there's the Hoopla guy. They're not really a character I wanted to talk about, but I thought the joke was funny, and this seemed like the best place to put this iconic moment. When thinking about the moment in, the context of the training video, it becomes even funnier, because why exactly did they leave that in? Probably because of Mr. Krabs' low-budget standards, as we saw in As Seen on TV. So, I think I just answered my own question. The last minute or two of this fantastic episode deserves its own special attention, so you bet your ass I'm here to give exactly that. First, the perfectly drawn-out a cappella drumroll of the Krabby Patty is simply amazing, especially when the narrator has to gasp for breath. And then I love how we see SpongeBob literally bowing to the poster of the Krabby Patty. Like, get a hold of yourself, man. The visuals of this whole scene are great, and I love how SpongeBob is animated here. The building anticipation is done so well, which leads directly into what is definitely one of, if not outright, my favorite ending to a SpongeBob SquarePants episode. Like SpongeBob, we the audience are drawn in, ready to learn about the sumptuous, the lip-moistening, spine-tingling, heart-stopping pleasure center that is a Krabby Patty. SpongeBob's exaggerated nodding, to the point where he rips his own face off, mirrors how we feel, ready to hear even a second of the legendary secret formula that we've hyped up for 3 seasons now. And then we hear those words that we've been waiting to hear. The secret formula is... and the episode cuts to credits. This cliffhanger ending is just as beautiful as it is dastardly, just evil. And yet it is so, so good. Somehow, even after all these years of rewatching this episode, the ending gets me every single time. I think it's in the voice acting, honestly. For whatever reason, I always feel like the episode will cut just a little further into the word is than it does, so it manages to surprise me every time, meaning that the enjoyment is always there and never falters. Just an absolutely perfect ending to an absolutely perfect episode. If it somehow wasn't crystal clear by now, I love Krusty Krab training video. It has a timeless quality to it that never ever gets old. And now that I'm older and I've worked some jobs myself, I can see the episode in a new perspective because it becomes relatable, and I can see just what it is that it's parodying. This episode is just brilliantly written, and it's so, so hilarious. Easily one of the funniest episodes of the entire show. There's not a single joke that misses. Its unique atmosphere makes it a standout as well. And the ending truly sets it apart from the rest, and I think it might be the final element that makes this episode unequivocally my favorite. And so taking all of this together, this is why Krusty Krab training video is entering my amazing tier with the one and only score of a 10 out of 10, ensuring its place as my #1 favorite episode. Bravo. As always, I'll be closing out this long-ass review with some closing thoughts of mine. And I suppose all of these are mostly reserved for Krusty Krab training video. Sorry, wet painters, I love you, but now is not the time. Krusty Krab training video is another one of those episodes that's regarded as one of the show's best. And obviously, I think this reputation is absolutely earned. I haven't actually met very many people for whom this episode is their favorite, but nearly everyone I've talked to has at least liked this thing. I don't normally see any kind of hate for this one, which is good, because if you hate this episode, what's going on? Also, fun fact, I have a painting of the ripped SpongeBob face in my room. In fact, as we speak, I'm staring at this painting right now. I'd give more details about it, but it was a commission, and I don't want to be giving out any kind of identifiable information in any way, so sorry if you wanted more detail, but I doubt any of y'all did. I'm feeling pretty talked out, if we're being honest, so I think I'm just going to end the review here. Looking forward to maybe talking with y'all in the comments about the episode, and I'll see y'all in the next review.